Hey, what's up, guys? Steel City Dash Cam here. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my experience ordering this car, the 2016 Mazda 3, through Carvana. Pretty much a basic rundown of the start to finish, as well as a couple excerpts of what my roommate has dealt with also purchasing a vehicle from Carvana. So we'll hop right into it. I was in the market for a car. I was just kind of browsing there, waiting to see if something popped up. I wanted to save up more for a down payment, but when this car popped up, I couldn't say no. 6-year-old car, right in my price range, with just over 4,000 miles on it. And, I figure I have to buy this car. So it made it pretty easy where I impulse purchased that car that night. Went through all the paperwork, was able to do everything completely online that night. They reached out about shipping, and I could have picked where I live to have it delivered to one of the vending machines out in Bridgeville. I elected to have it delivered because I had it delivered on a day off work. The only thing I had to do was, a couple days later, they had me sign some forms that I had to sign in front of a notary. Now, what's really cool is they give you a usage link, I don't know what to, like a one-time use link, for a I believe it's called Notarize, notary app. And they connect you online with a live notary via video chat, and you sign on your phone or on your computer or on whatever, and you don't have to go anywhere. I actually did it as I was loading in for a gig at work. So it's literally that easy. The day comes where the vehicle's going to be delivered, they call me. I had heard the horror stories about deliveries getting pushed back because of driver issues and truck issues. They called me telling me that the truck they're going to deliver it on broke down. Now, what they did, which in my opinion was a fantastic move on their part, was they offered, it was at a lot in North Versailles, which is not super far from me. It's maybe a 20-minute drive. They offered to order an Uber for me to that lot to pick up the car. So that's what I did. Uber shows up right on time. They ordered it within 5 minutes of the call. I was there within a half hour. I actually ended up, when all was said and done, picking up the car before I would have normally had it delivered, which was great. So I went, I pick up the car. When I get there, it was a little tricky to find out how to get into this building because it was not meant to be a customer-facing spot. But it worked out. The guy comes out with the keys. He lets me take it for a quick test drive. They didn't specify anything. No one got in the car with me or anything. They're just like, you want to take it for a quick spin? So I'm like, yeah, sure. I drive it a couple miles up the road and back, knowing damn well I was fine with the car. Like, unless something crazy was happening, there was no reason I was going to refuse to pick up the car. And, the guy was very nice, gave me the whole spiel about, within 7 days, I can exchange it for any other car I see. Like if I find one with less mileage, and he actually even joked that I was probably not going to find that. And he was correct. I've yet to see something pop up with even close to the mileage I have on this now. I'm at a little over 14,000 on this car. I purchased this back in May of 2022, which I should have specified earlier, but that's okay. So I left with the vehicle. Everything was great since. The payments were super easy to set up through Bridgecrest. It was super, super easy. Everything's been straightforward. I have had no issues with the car, but I opted for their extra warranty. Okay. I opted for the extra warranty, and thankfully, knock on wood, have not needed it. But I'd much rather have it, especially since I have a practically new car, and it is a full, like a warranty you'd have on a new vehicle for 5 years, 55,000 miles or 50,000 miles. But the car has been running great. There was a couple dings and scratches, but they were very good with disclosing what there was. They mentioned the splitter was scratched underneath, clearly from like scraping leaving a driveway. I don't care. There's one little dent with a little scratch that doesn't go through the paint, so that was fine. There were a couple small, like really, really, really small dents on the roof, almost like it was in like the tiniest hail I've ever seen in my life. But unless you're looking at it in the exact right angle, you don't even see it. and even when you do, you can't feel it when you run your hand across it, so it's just like the slight deviation in the light when it hits it. So I don't really care. But they did disclose all of it, and I was fine with that. And as far as titling, they covered everything. The fees are obviously part of me financing the car. I did pick gap coverage. They offer what is apparently pretty good gap coverage. And, you know, I had everything ready for them. They had everything ready for me. That's kind of how it went. The other horror story I typically hear is that it takes a long time to get your plates, which, as I'll explain in a minute, my roommate can attest to. For me, I was issued Arizona temp tags that lasted 90 days, and I was told within about 45 days I should get the plates. I had heard that like never actually happens, but in my experience, I got them in 43 days. Now, I wasn't home to pick up the delivery, so they actually just rerouted it to a FedEx store, UPS store, I forget which. And I just went, signed for it, picked them up. It was that easy. I had plates. I was able to go get my vehicle inspected, and it passed with flying colors as I would have expected. And my scenario probably could not have gone much better, in all honesty. Their customer service was great. Their communication was great. They, honestly, for me, went above and beyond. When their truck broke down, they Ubered me out to the place to get the car so that I wouldn't be delayed, and in fact, ended up getting it early. My roommate, on the other hand, he has had good experience overall with the vehicle, excluding the fact that he actually had a UPS truck hit it, so he had to deal with insurance already, and it was a minor, it needed a couple bumper pieces. But his issue was when he bought his vehicle, he bought a 2018 Tacoma, and he bought it while still living in Texas. So he bought it, he got Texas temporary tags. Turns out, and you know, he kept reaching out trying to figure out when they were putting through the registration, so he knew when he was getting his plates. And they kept saying they were doing it, but they weren't. And it turns out they didn't actually have the title yet from the guy who sold it to Carvana. So they eventually got it worked out. He eventually got Texas plates. And I believe I don't know if he's gone yet, but he's intending to go to get PA plates any day now. Because he has, I believe, 60 days after you move here. Or 30 days. Either way, he's well within the threshold. He just got his Texas plates maybe 2 weeks ago. Not even. And aside from all that fun, they actually, in terms of the customer service, they did reimburse him for it. Because technically, his temporary tags were expired by about 2 weeks. Now, by the time he got his plates. Now, normally, he had to deal with stuff with titling it in Texas and then in PA, but that's not the point here, because with Carvana, that stuff had nothing to do with Carvana, so none of it is relevant to my review or his partial testimony to my review of this. But I completely lost my train of thought on that. I was watching that van to make sure they didn't pull right in front of me. Excluding those, I mean, they did go above and beyond in terms of, like, rectifying the issue while they were straight up, honestly, not fully truthful in saying, oh, they were doing this, but they just didn't want to admit that they were running into issues with getting the proper permits, or getting the proper paperwork, and, like, they didn't have the title and all that. They weren't being truthful about that, but they also did waive a month's payment for him, and it took them a while to send it because of his changing addresses and stuff. But he did receive that, and they paid for a month of his car payment. Like, not moved it to the end, not anything like that. They compensated him for a month of his payment. And in theory, he shouldn't, because of the whole temp tag thing, because they were expired through Texas. That's where I lost my train of thought earlier. He should have not been able to drive it, which is part of why they wanted to compensate him for it. But, you know, even though he legally shouldn't have in Pittsburgh, and in the city of Pittsburgh especially, but in Pennsylvania in general, they are becoming way more lenient on enforcing all those kinds of rules with expired tags for a certain amount of time. For example, Pittsburgh, if your tag is, I believe, 2 months out or less, they can't stop you at all. They can mention it if they stop you for something legitimate, but they stopped a lot of stopping you for minor non-traffic infractions. And so, he knew he could get away with driving it. He felt a little sketched out, understandably, and, again, in theory, he should not have been driving it, but, by the time they would have sent him a new temporary plate, they sent him his actual plates. So, it's, when everything else is being followed by the book, it's okay to cut a little corner. And I can't really knock Carvana for that, because he could have, gotten his temporary plate. But, again, it's not so much a statement on Carvana. The only, he had some more of the issues that you've heard of happening with, like, the titling and the plates. His issues getting the vehicle, he had none. He got the vehicle, it was great, it was exactly as advertised, it's in great shape. One little scuff was marked and shown. And now previously, he bought his in August. Bought it shortly before he moved here. But he is now at a point where, everything is worked out with him, and everything worked out with me from the get-go, and has been perfect this entire time. So, honestly, my overall review with Carvana, at least from my experience, again, everyone's experience is going to be different. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. But my experience is great, and their customer service is great. Everything was timely for me. Obviously, we saw where some shortcomings can happen, but he also did have them, although the initial titling thing is absolutely on them, he had the initial monkey wrench of he bought it while living in Texas, registered in Texas, and moved to Pennsylvania before he actually was issued his plates for Texas. So, I don't know how much of that I could chalk up to Carvana, or how much of his entire scenario can actually be attributed to Carvana themselves, versus this very bizarre case, because this does not happen that often. So, overall, highly recommend in terms of buying a vehicle. You just make sure you're aware of the shortcomings, make sure you are thorough with the vehicle, get it checked out, take it to a shop, because if within those 7 days you find out something's wrong, they'll fix it. If it needs something to pass your initial inspection, they'll pay for it. I didn't have to deal with that, but I do know people who have. I can't give you specific instances because I just frankly don't know enough detail to tell you what didn't pass, what needed fixed. Or frankly, honestly, because I know multiple people who've bought cars from them, I don't remember who had what happen. And all in all, would highly recommend. Just make sure you keep in mind all the scenarios. Make sure you, if you have the ability to go pick it up, that could be more reliable. That's just something to keep in mind. With the delivery, plan for it to potentially show up late, or plan for those kinds of issues. Even though it didn't really happen to me, and what did happen, they rectified so quickly and in a great manner, professionally. But that may not always be the case, and this is just my testimonial from what I've experienced, so I cannot speak for every scenario. And I know there's going to be a bunch of people who agree with me and had perfect experiences buying Carvana, and then there's other people who had nightmare experiences. That's how everything is. And as much as you feel like you hear a ton about the negative stuff, that's because a lot of times people don't talk too much about the positive stuff, because there's nothing of remark to say. So, keep that in mind as well, that with all the negative stuff you hear, there's some negative you didn't hear, there's also got to be a good bit of positive you have not heard, because people are more likely to be vocal when something negative happens during an experience, like to warn people, versus to reassure that a system's going to work out well. So that being said, take everything I said with a grain of salt, but also, do what's best for you. And if you think buying or selling with Carvana is the route to take, just weigh all your options, and just go into it with an open mind, and don't be in a rush. Again, everything worked out for me. Doesn't mean it will for you, because I've seen what can happen. So just keep in mind that it's not a perfect process. It might end up perfectly for you, it might not. So, now that I've repeated the same thing like 6 times to end this video, that's pretty much all I got to say. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below, and I'll try my best to get to an answer for you. If you want any more info overall, feel free to check out, if you look up I think r/Carvana, honestly, has a lot of good experiences, positive and negative. More so negative because, again, what I said before, the negative ones tend to be more vocal. But just do your research, and hopefully this little tidbit does help you, that you're at least hearing firsthand, hey, it can go right. No matter what you might hear, for an average Joe who just decided to impulse buy a car, it worked out fine. So, thanks for watching. Feel free to check out my other stuff, or don't. I do what you want to do. I ain't here to control you. So, have a good day, or don't. Again, subtle Drake and Josh reference in there somewhere. And, yeah. Have a great day.